Reactive training systems.
What was your mental game like going to the World Championship in comparison to your previous competition?
It's the same. It's
Your
always the
consistent.
same for me, at least at this point in my career. It wasn't always the same, but it's been trained to be the same. And it's really just a matter of execution, process of execution. It remains the same regardless of what room I'm in, who's watching me, what competition it is. And if I am training to the competition standard, then I ought to have absolutely nothing to worry about. I know a lot of people get nervous about the level of judging and, oh, this is an international meet, the level of judging. People have asked me that and talked about that, knowing that before I moved over to PA and IPF and being a national USAPL referee, oh, you guys are more strict. I don't look at it as being more strict. I look at it as being more consistent and more precise in the calls. When you go to a smaller local meet, you see a lot of errors. And people getting white lights when they're not to depth. That's just an error. It's a precision standpoint. That's an inexperienced referee. It's not a more strict referee. You might get a little bit more strict in maybe a pause on a bench press because some referees like really want you motionless at the chest. That didn't really play out. And I'm usually good about being able to adjust my game plan to match where the referee is at and what the calls are and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, for the most part, it's all focused on process and execution. It remains the same no matter where I'm at, no matter what the referees are. And I train to a high enough standard that when I go to a higher level meet, I am not worried about the judging at all. That regardless, I shouldn't say never. I haven't worried about the judging in a very long time.
I think you brought up some interesting points also before when you mentioned the injury and that you can always rely on your baseline strength. That's something that I can also rely to at the moment. Because fun fact is, I've been doing baseline, the approach that Mike came up with, which is doing SBD 4 times per week. I've been doing that for almost 7 months now. It's taught me a lot so far. And also now going into a competition, the nationals next week, even though I'm also dealing with an injury at the moment, my shoulder injury, I know I can always rely on my baseline. And I know also that I can always rely on the preparation that I've put in training before the competition. So I'm not gonna expect any miracles on a platform, but I know that I can always expect at least the performance that I'm able to put on in training on an average day, or let's say even on a bad day. And what's really interesting now is also that when it comes to competition standards and just being able to rely on your own abilities, since I do SBD so often per week, I just have the experience and I know, okay, it's just gonna be another SBD day. I've done this plenty of times. How can you guys relate to relying on your baseline strength?
Recent competition, been discussing this with Ross as well. Like I felt I was over the peak going in the competition. Like I had a really good session or last couple of sessions going into the comp, and then it wasn't quite there on the day. So adjusted the game plan. We adjusted it and we're like, okay, this is where I'm at baseline. So let's just reach for these numbers and go for there. Like my squat, say it peaked-ish. Like I was aiming 5 kilos more, but we're like, okay, we'll play it safe. We'll go 5 kilos left off the target. And it was right on the money. Perfect third attempt. Going into bench press, so we went with the original plan. I opened, it felt okay. Then I did my second attempt and I was like, I don't think it's there. I think we'll just add 2.5 and if I get it, I'd rather gain 2.5 than adding 5 and missing out that 2.5. So we went with that and then we adjusted the deadlifts. We opened a little bit lighter and then we took a bigger jump on the second to the original second attempt. Pretty close to what we wanted for a second, but then that pretty much locked in my overall winning for the comp. We just went, okay, we'll just go 10 on that. And it was too much on the day, but it did help knowing where my baseline was. Like, hindsight, maybe 5 kilos more on that third attempt deadlift or just like skipping it. I was pretty done after that second attempt. Like just my hips were just not having it, especially after that third squat. I was just, okay, that just took a lot out of me. Yeah, having an idea of the baseline does help. It does ingrain some confidence as well. I know I can lift this.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that from a mindset standpoint that plays into this very thing too is just from a like powerlifting culture standpoint. So many people look at meet day as, oh, time to go PR, PR this, PR that. It's a distraction. If the PR is there, cool, take it. Yes, that's fantastic. But we don't go compete for PRs. Look, I get it. We are trying to extend that. We do want PRs. If we never have PRs, then we probably need to assess what we're doing. But the intention and point of a competition is not solely to PR. And we really have to be mindful of that, particularly the longer that we compete. Because if we're going into a competition, we're going there to compete. We have to be aware of that. Adam, for example, going into that competition, the primary goal is to win the money. Me going to Masters World, the primary goal is to win the division. Okay. Like chatting with Peter after the meet, how do we do that? The intent ought to be to win that with the least amount of effort possible. If you end up having to put more effort in, cool, you can reach for that, but you don't reach for that unless you need to. And that's the point here, is that I had an opportunity to squat for a PR on my third squat. I really believe 275 was there. It would have been an all-time PR. Would have been awesome. Would have been super cool. I took 270 because we knew, and we were talking about it as I come off, we need to build the total, because if I miss lifts right now, it will open the door for Steve, the dude from Canada, to win. And it's up to me to close the damn door. Am I here for that PR, or am I here to win this competition? Primary goal, number one, is to win the competition. If I PR along the way, great.
When you're
cool,
in that
grand,
position
wonderful.
as well.
Yep.
When you're in that position as
but
well.
But that's not my point.
And
it's exactly
yours
when
to
you're in
lose.
that position.
Like if you're in front and you're making less, it's yours to lose. You need to take what's safe, what's going to put more pressure on your competitors, rather than shooting for a PR.
Yeah. Well, technically I was behind still at that point. Projected openers had him ahead by 17.5 kilos. I knew I had more in me than where he was going based on the scouting report, which we're going to talk about in a future episode with Peter. So stay tuned to that. But that played into the conversation. I need to make lifts. I can't give up points. And so I took 270, went great. Steve took 275 on his third and missed. Oh, he just opened the door for me. Cool. Let's go. But yes, there are meets that you go into a meet. You're like, my sole purpose of going into this meet right now is to try and PR my squat or PR my bench. Cool. Get after it. But that can't be the focus of every single meet you do, especially if you're in this for as long as some of us are in it. And like I had a game plan meeting with a lifter of mine yesterday who's doing a deadlift only competition this weekend. And in the conversation, he's been dealing with a little bit of an achy adductor and this block hasn't gone quite the way we would have liked it. The other block went great. And this block his adductor soreness has just not been able to resolve itself even after we've made some adjustments. It's lingering a little bit. And we start looking at the landscape of the competition. This is the same competition that he won best lifter at last year. And he starts looking at what the layout of the competition is. And he's, I still have an opportunity to win best lifter. I'm not going to be able to PR. Like his focus had to shift to what do I need to do to win this meet? And looking at that and looking at the numbers and looking at the competition, it looks like it'll be about 10 kilos under his best deadlift. Okay, cool. What do you want to do? Do you want to go win best lifter again? Or do you want to go PR your deadlift? Sure, PRing and winning at the same time, that's all great.
I think that it's a mindset thing as well. If you can go through some adversity and where you're at to get through that and achieve objectively the win or best lifter, I think that's a huge win rather than having an actual number that's on the board. As an athlete, that to strategically get through that is massive. Shows maturity in your lifting. So wanted to add that.
I completely agree with that.
Yep.
And I think it depends for
Definitely.
sure also on the amount of competitions that you do per year. It also depends on your level as a lifter. And I like the fact, Ross, that you brought up that you, like, when you compete to win, you ideally want to put in the least amount of effort to win. Also, depending on what level you are at, you also put yourself at risk. That's the thing. And also recently, like ever since Sheffield exists, we've seen at World Championships also a couple of times that lifters would just load a world record on their, let's say, last deadlift attempt, and they just don't show up on the platform just to create the hype. But they just, why they're doing this also is not necessarily only, the main reason is, of course, to keep some kilos in tank when it comes to competing at Sheffield so they can get a higher percentage of the world record total. But also, like, why should they put themselves at a high risk, especially at that level? And the longevity in the sports is also something really interesting. So what are your plans actually? Like, how do you approach off seasons? Because now I'm personally, I'm gonna have different kind of approach this time. I'm gonna have a few blocks where, since I just came from the hardcore SBD program, I'm just really gonna take some time to train less specific, focus more on building size again, since I've lost some weight, and I think also that definitely had an impact on my shoulder injury. And I'm also gonna start doing Pilates once or twice per week. So it's gonna be something fun just to regain some mental energy, just to try out something new. What is your approach when it comes to that?
There's a couple of things that I think about with stuff like that is when we look at powerlifting, you have, at least the way I tend to look at it especially from my engineering background, you have two main things that are occurring. You have force production, like your ability to produce force that is greater than the gravity's force production. And then you have stability. You have force transfer. The load is on your back or in your hands, and all loads have to go into the floor at some point. When you're squatting and benching, when you're squatting and deadlifting, it's through the feet. When you're benching, it's primarily, some of it's going into the feet, into the floor, but primarily through the shoulders into the bench pad. You can produce all the force in the world. None of it matters if you can't transfer it. If you can't transfer the force to the ground, it doesn't matter how much you can produce. You'll get buckled and you'll fold. So all that stuff from a health of joint standpoint is what creates that stability. Like a lot of the injuries that we talk about, that is just a destabilization of that joint. And again, I look at it differently than what a PT probably looks at it. Like they're going to look at it like, oh, well, this muscle, that tendon, this or that. And I just, generally speaking, less specific. The joint is destabilized. It doesn't have the ability to transfer the force. And there is a pain symptom in the joint as well, generally speaking, that doesn't allow you to do what you did before. And there's all kinds of different perspectives on what, like yoga and Pilates and conditioning and different things of that nature. And some people like it and some people dislike it. And at the end of the day, those are things that I look at as being like third order effects. They're not the thing that's going to increase your powerlifting total. They're not the thing that's going to move the needle on any of your lifts, but they are 100% going to be the things that keep you healthy and keep you stable in the joints so that you can continue to sustain the demands of the training, so that the training can drive the PRs and move the needle. But if we don't have that, like the lifters that I work with that do that stuff on a regular basis, they're generally the ones that remain more durable and healthy. Obviously, it's not like a pool of 10,000 people, but it is an observation that I see. So I'm excited to hear how that goes for you, Gaby, after your meet and you get a couple weeks, couple months down the road, and what kind of response you have to doing that and having more of a focus.
Definitely gonna be a new experience for me. But do you do any type of other sports outside of powerlifting in your off season, or any type of activities just to also clear your mind? And because also to avoid burnout long term.
Oh yeah. Even in season, I have a very active life. We do a lot of hiking and mountain biking. I have sprint work that is in my training all the time. Even in my peaking block, I'm still sprinting. I'm just not sprinting as hard or as rigorous as I will when I go into my off season. My off season, I'll have an entire session dedicated to plyometric sprint work, things of that nature. And one of the ways to think about a lot of that stuff, we often talk about like unilateral work and how important unilateral work is for durability, Bulgarian split squats and things of that nature. That's all this is. That's all that stuff is. That's more unilateral work. We're getting into different planes and ranges of motions. And when your human body has access to the full range of motion, your body will be more healthy. And I think where people get tripped up in the powerlifting world is they're like, oh, well, if I have access to all this range of motion, then I won't be as tight and I won't be as powerful because I don't have that tightness. Wrong. Your tightness needs to be active tension, not passive tension, not tension that you just walk around with because you're always tense, especially if you think about it from how do we get stronger? General adaptation syndrome. You induce stress and the body recovers and you get stronger. If you're always passively tensioned, you will always be under a certain amount of stress. That stress that you're constantly carrying around will take from your body's ability to recover from the programming stress. A lot of that stuff is also to help reduce the amount of passive tension that is being carried in the body. You ought to be able to access the full range of motion from a health and durability standpoint. Now, that doesn't mean you need to be able to do like the Olympic lifts, for example. Like I wouldn't be able to do a heavy snatch, but I can get into that position. I have access to that.
Shh. There is a secret to great training programs, but it's not a magic set and rep scheme for this one weird exercise that powerlifting pros don't want you to know about. The secret is in your training log. You see, years ago, we began developing tools to help you unlock these secrets, and we've been putting them online for free ever since. That's right, it's free for everybody. Now you may be thinking, what's the big deal? People have been logging training forever, and you're right, but the secret isn't just in keeping a logbook. It's using that log to make better training decisions. That's the real secret. This is where the RTS training log excels. Hey, you haven't done SSB squats in 3 months and you're wondering what your target weight should be? We can help you with that. Did you overshoot on your top set and you're wondering if you should adjust your back off sets? We can help you with that too. Are you building the most important training block of this year and you're wondering what your most highly effective blocks have in common? Yep, we got you covered there too. There's more, there's a lot more. And yes, it is all free. Not just a free trial, not free with ads, just regular free. You go to reactivetrainingsystems.com, then you click on apps, sign up for a login, and you're in.